Okay, good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of the Arab Organization for Human Rights in the UK, I would like to thank each and every one of you for joining us today. We are pleased to welcome those of you who have been able to attend and contribute to this webinar under the title of Reporting from the Frontlines, the Deadly Reality for Gaza Journalists Amidst Genocide. Let me remind you of the main purpose of this webinar. The primary objective of this webinar is to draw attention to the targeting of journalists in Gaza and to discuss the broader implication for human rights and press freedom. Our goal is to highlight the risks journalists face, the importance of protecting press freedom, and the urgent need for international accountability. Today's fields of discussion include, first, the current situation in Gaza and its impact on journalists. Two, detailed accounts of attacks on journalists by Israeli forces and settlers. Three, the legal and international response to the targeting of journalists. Four, the psychological and social impact on journalists and their families. Five, and last, strategies for advocacy and protection of press freedom in conflict zone, or let's say hostile zone. Before we get started, I would like to introduce our guest speakers for today. Dr. Noah Shaindlinger, and excuse my pronunciation, if you can correct me if I'm wrong, Assistant Professor of Middle East History at the Department of History and Political Science at Worcester State University. Mr. Aidan White, founder of Ethical Journalism Network. Mr. Bill Law, editor of Arab Digest. Ms. Lisa Adhikari, U.S. activist and human rights advocate. Ms. Jedda Sparks, U.S. activist and human rights advocate. Ms. Vivi Chen, U.S. activist and human rights advocate. And last, David Hummel, German activist and human rights advocate. Allow me to explain the presentation format of today so that every speaker knows exactly what he has to do and what to expect. Each speaker will have 4 to 5 minutes to present his testimony and insights. The activists and the speakers who are currently in Palestine and have been attacked and assaulted by settlers and Israeli soldiers will focus on the experiences and testimonies during their presentations and in their field of work. And after all speakers have finished their presentations, if time permits, we will have a discussion session lasting around 20 minutes. During this session, speakers can add their thoughts and comments on their speakers' contributions and other speakers' contributions, of course. And at the end of the webinar, each speaker will have 1 minute to provide their final words and conclusion messages about the seminar itself. Okay, let me cut it short here and let's start. Thank you very much for listening, and let's welcome to the floor the first speaker of today, and it will be Mr. Law. As I presented at the beginning, Mr. Bill Law is the editor of Arab Digest. Mr. Law, you might have the floor now.
Your mic's mute.
Yeah. Mr. Law?
Apologies. Hi.
It's okay. Go ahead.
Okay. Let me repeat my thanks to you and also to the AOHR in the UK for this opportunity to speak. And I look particularly forward to hearing accounts from journalists in Palestine and the experiences they are undergoing. Fortunately, I am here in the United Kingdom. I was for many years a journalist at the BBC and did have a fair amount of experience in the West Bank and in Israel, and I'm well familiar with the Israeli authorities' approach to journalism and to anything that is deemed to be critical of that particular regime. And that situation has become even more heightened and indeed very, very lethal for journalists. I believe it's 170 journalists have now been killed by the Israelis. It's a shocking number. Nothing like this has ever happened before in any conflict that we've ever witnessed. But then, this conflict is breaking all levels and all limits of horror, really, as the genocide continues. In terms of journalists, I just want to reflect back a little bit and talk about Shireen Abu Akleh, who, of course, was an American Palestinian journalist who was shot and killed by a sniper. This over 2 years ago now. The Israeli authorities, quote, investigated, found that yes, the bullet was actually fired by one of their people, but there was good reason to do so. That if it was an error, it was an unfortunate error. I don't believe it was. I believe it was a targeted assassination, and we've seen that confirmed over and over and over again, not just in the killings of journalists, but in the killings of civilians, and most horrifically, we're seeing the snipers killing children. Children as young as 8 and 9 with headshot wounds. As I say, the situation is one that is, it almost goes beyond any words that can describe it. In terms of what the Israelis intend to do, are striving to do, is to destroy the record. And they want to destroy the record keepers, who of course are journalists, as well as aid workers, as well as those individuals on the ground who, as civilian journalists, if you will, are recording some of the many atrocities. One of the things that the Israelis have done systematically is the destruction of archives, of libraries, of printing houses. They are determined to wipe out any record. So it is so important, and I can only applaud the journalists on the ground, the enormous courage they're showing in keeping the record, keeping the account. And we must, one of the things I would like to see us do is to be sure that we have an archive, one that the Israelis can't destroy, one that will be brought before the ICC, one that will be brought before the ICJ, one that will be brought before the court of global opinion. We mustn't forget ever the strength of the Israeli lobby. It's very powerful. It's very effective in many ways. We've seen it here in our own situation in the UK. A new government has come in. This government is avowedly continuing to support Netanyahu, as they did in the opposition. Sir Keir Starmer, the new prime minister, determined that his MPs would not even mention the word ceasefire for several months before they even got around to talking about ceasefire. The record of this new government will be shameful, I fear. I think that the situation for journalists will continue to be extremely dangerous and extremely threatening for all of those journalists in place. As I say, I think what we can do from the outside is to continue to record, to protest, to encourage, and to demand. I mean, one of the interesting things that's happened here in the UK is that in several constituencies where the Labour Party thought they should do well, and indeed would have done well, there was a massive pro-Palestinian vote. In fact, one of the most powerful allies of Keir Starmer, one of the architects of the campaign, was defeated in his own seat in a constituency called Leicester South by an independent pro-Palestinian candidate. And Ashworth, who had a 33,000 seat majority in 2019, got less than 14,000 votes. Jeremy Corbyn, who well known for his support for the Palestinian cause, was thrown out of the Labour Party. This was the former leader thrown out of the Labour Party. He ran as an independent, won in a riding just next to me. So there are rays of hope, and there are ways that people can protest in terms of voting, speaking out, demanding, because this is a horrific situation and it needs to end. It needs to end now. I hope that, as I say, journalists in place, and I know they will continue their extraordinarily brave and courageous work, and I applaud them for it. Let me end there, because the platform should be theirs and certainly not mine. And I thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you very much, Mr. Law, for this information and for these feelings as well. And we might give the floor now to Mr. David Hummel. Mr. David Hummel, a German activist and human rights advocate. Mr. Hummel, are you there?
Hello, yes.
Mr. Hummel, yeah. So you're talking from Germany, right? Hello,
Yes, can you?
David, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
So, Vivi, you have the floor now. You may start.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, I would like to start off by addressing the situation that on Sunday, a group of 8 of us here are present as internationals in Palestine. Again, my name is David Hummel. I'm from Berkeley, California, and I'm a student studying journalism there.
Sorry, David. Sorry for the interruption, but David, you are now where exactly? Can you tell us where you are now?
Yes, right now I am in the town of Kusra in the West Bank.
In the West Bank. Okay, please go ahead.
Yes, and I will go ahead and recount the incident, what happened, and yes, so 8 of us on Sunday were as part of an international campaign, as part of a protective presence, and in the town of Kusra, we were accompanying a local farmer to his olive fields, which he had not been able to access since October. And this, we went to his olive fields to check on the situation and provide a protective presence there. We were carrying our phones and cameras to record the incident, and we were not a threat to anyone. What had happened was that 8 settlers from the nearby settlement of Esh Kodesh came down and began to encroach on the area of the olive fields. They came carrying wooden batons, metal rods, and later they would also throw rocks at us. This was purely intimidation, and the Palestinian farmer and his family fled the scene because they knew the violence that these settlers enact upon them daily. However, as internationals, we stayed there to in the field. We were there legally on Palestinian land, and we stayed there to stay in the space. What had happened next was that one of the settlers shown in the videos that have been circulating had his face unmasked and really started inciting the violence when he came forward and started attacking us by holding his phone in our faces and shoving me backwards since I was in the front. This inspired all the other settlers to start the violence, and they came at us with metal rods and the wooden batons. 2 of them started swinging at my legs, my arms, and my face with the wooden batons. I held up my arms to protect myself, and as you see, I have still several injuries across my body from doing so. One of the blows got through to my face as well. What had happened meanwhile was that they were not just attacking me, but all of us in the group, including 6 women, 3 of whom were mothers as well. They shoved 2 women off of the side of the hill, and caused one of them to drop her phone, which they then took and smashed to pieces. Later, when she tried to find the phone after the incident, it was gone, so it was clear they had removed that as well. This incident shows not only the danger that settlers are to everyday Palestinians, but also to internationals and to journalists. None of whom are safe under the occupation. After the encounter with the settlers, we retreated and turned around the corner of the hill to encounter the Israeli army. The army was there and immediately got out, aimed their guns at local Palestinians in the area, and fired 2 shots in their direction of live ammunition. We had to yell at the army, stop, stop, before they turned to us again. Yeah, and the army made no attempt to ask us what had happened. Instead, they harassed us and the Palestinians in the area. We were on the phone with the Israeli police at the time, and the police made no attempt to, or the police were just trying to figure out where we were. We handed our phone over to the Israeli police, Israeli army to talk with the police. The police returned and said the army had told them not to come. So the Israeli army not only attacked Palestinians when we arrived, they told the police not to come, and also they made no attempt to go after the settlers, which had attacked us. On the day after, on Monday, we encountered the army again. The army had come to the local village in Kusra downtown, and they stopped our car and they talked to me. They said that we want to, in their eyes, kill them. One of the soldiers said, "Here, take my M16 and kill me, and it is better you kill me than you stand with the Palestinians." They were very aware of what had happened on Sunday, and expressed their anger that way.
I see. I think your story is very touching, David, especially it's fresh, and on the ground coverage as well is so hard in these circumstances. And we hope you get well soon. And just one question, David, did you encounter any kind of discrimination between dealing with you and the Palestinians as a border, or the Israeli troops are dealing everybody the same?
Thank you for bringing this up. I think it is really important to say again that the violence that we faced as internationals is only a small fraction of what Palestinians experience every day. This was also made evident by that when the army showed up, they targeted the Palestinians immediately with live ammunition. And in many instances, if it was Palestinians trying to be on Palestinian farms and farmland, who knows what they would have encountered. It would be likely that they would have faced much worse violence than simply wooden batons. There are many documented instances where in such cases Palestinians have been shot at, injured, and killed for doing the same thing we as internationals have done.
I see. Thank you very much, David, for your contribution. Please stay with us. We might have lots of questions for you since you are on the ground in West Bank, and hope you'll get well soon. And
Thank you.
You're welcome. Now we give the floor to Dr. Noah Shaindlinger, Assistant Professor of Middle East History at the Department of History and Political Science at Worcester State University. Dr. Noah.
Thank you very much. And thank you for David for his story. And I hope David feels better.
Yeah. I think David's information was really touching and very close to what we are talking about today, and fresh information. So I hope this will help you, Dr. Noah, to enlighten us with some more information.
I want to point out to Jedda and the window behind her, because everybody who has been in the West Bank knows that many windows in Palestinian homes in towns and in Hebron, right, have these bars installed on them. And these bars are actually meant to try and minimize some of the damage that settlers make when they attack Palestinian homes. So it is kind of important to note that it's not just even in the fields, right? They come into towns, right?
It is indicative. It is indicative, yeah.
Yes, exactly. So I am located right now in the United States. And as we saw yesterday, the United States Congress celebrated and feted, welcomed in open arms, with open arms, Benjamin Netanyahu, again, for, I believe, the fourth time. And with very little pushback. It also illustrated why Palestine is not just a foreign policy issue, right? That maybe some voters can ignore. First of all, the fact that Congress invites somebody who is about to be to be the subject of arrest warrants, right? Quite imminently. Somebody who is sought for war crimes, a war criminal. I look forward to see, Assad or Putin also, feted like this in US Congress. This is not just a matter of foreign policy. What we're seeing is also a suppression of the First Amendment, of people who are going to the streets. Like we saw a lot of police violence yesterday in our streets. We see, of course, a lot of repression within academia. There is what one of my colleagues called the Palestine penalty, as in university administrators that target faculty who speak up about Palestine, especially faculty of color, especially Muslim and Arab faculty members. I mean, obviously, of course, we have seen the targeting of students. At Harvard, only yesterday, certain group of students received their diploma after the Harvard Corporation refused to give them their, diploma because of their Palestine solidarity activism on campus. We are seeing really, for the most part, incredibly slanted coverage of the genocide in Gaza. I mean, if you think about New York Times, if you think about using the passive voice to absurdity, trying to cover up for the actual agent, right? Who is doing all of the killing? We are seeing really this absolute disgusting indifference, ignoring the Palestinian journalists who have been killed, while, of course, colleagues in the US are expressing solidarity with the repression of journalists elsewhere, as they should, right? But it's especially glaring when you ignore your colleagues that are being killed because they are reporting from the ground. And so, of course, the issue of the fact that most Americans do not want, including Republicans, right? Republican voters, do not want the United States to keep sending arms to Israel, right? And yet we are seeing no accountability. We're seeing our tax dollars being used to keep sending arms to Israel, right? So this is an issue of, what Democrats like to say, saving democracy, right?
Right.
Saving the First Amendment right, saving the majority rule and so on. So, I mean, I wanted to talk about something completely different, but I mean, these young activists really kind of reminded me why we do have some hope for a change. Because it's not governments that are going to save us. It's not even the UN that is going to save us. It's all of these people who go out to the streets in DC, but also the young activists who go to the West Bank, right? So, I mean, I want to thank you, and I hope that those of you who were injured will get better soon. And I really want to hear a lot of what you have to report.
Thank you, Dr. Noah, for this comment. And Jeff, I have one question for you, one comment for you. Since you're American now, and talking about the reaction of Netanyahu's speech yesterday at the White House or at the Congress, do you think that still the American people, the mass man, really believes what's going on by the politicians, or still now he has his own ways to reach the nice information he wants to reach, and this only just for propaganda? Does this really affect the normal people in the United States?
I mean, one of the issues is that, the political system in the United States is actually not democratic, right? It's actually minority rule. So it's kind of hard to gauge from electoral politics, really, what Americans think. But we do see in the last 9-10 months now, kind of a surge, right, of people who have never spoken before on Palestine,
Exactly.
Speak up and say, no, this is not okay, right? I mean, yeah, sure, celebrities as well, which sometimes it's surprising, but I mean, everyday people, where I live in a community with people who most of them I don't know, and have nothing to do with Palestine, have nothing to do with the Middle East. And, I walk around with like a kufiyah, or I say something, and then somebody said, yes, what is this? Why is Israel killing Palestinians? This is not okay. Why are we paying them to do this? Why are we sending weapons? I mean, I can really see this kind of on the ground, but I don't know if electoral politics would actually reflect.
Exactly. That's my point.
Yeah.
Thank you very much thank you very much. And thank you, Dr. Noah. And now we will give the floor to Jedda Sparks, U.S. activist and human rights advocates, to give her the comment. Please, Jedda, go ahead. Jedda Sparks.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Jedda, can you hear me?
With a little bit of an echo. We're all hanging out in the same room. All right.
Yeah, we can hear you very
you
well.
speak really quick just to check if I can hear you?
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you very quiet. I think we can.
Okay. Should I speak up?
One moment, please.
Okay.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah, can you hear me now clearly?
That's okay. Thank you
Go
very
ahead.
much.
We can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, wonderful. Well, I mean, I think the thing that I would really like to contribute to this conversation is the idea of just centering around the people of Palestine, because I hear these ideas of decolonization being talked about, and people using decolonization as a metaphor. And I think oftentimes people lose that colonization centers around the people who are being colonized, the indigenous people. And that is one of the more beautiful aspects of the things that I've seen here. And why it's tough to see like people building walls to protect their own land. People like they protect their land from the settlers because a common tactic is for them to uproot thousands of years old olive trees, plant them in the settlements, and then claim that these olive trees are indigenous to the land of the settlers rather than to them. So it's a kind of warfare that like delves into the symbolism of the land and encroaches on people's love for it as well. Every single farmer that I've talked to speaks very passionately about how their entire livelihood is attached to the land. And I don't mean that in the sense of they need the land in order to gain capital, but they have a genuine love for the land. There were 3 instances where we got to be a protective presence and walk with the farmers to land that is being it's a zone of harassment, right? If you enter into it, then it's likely that they'll come and intimidate you, much like what happened last Sunday. That was actually one of the moments. And before we were attacked, we were talking and accompanying this woman who had spent her whole life on the farm. She had been working it for 50 years. Some of the plants there she had planted when she was 15 years old. And she was beside herself. She was in tears because she saw that these plants were burned. She saw that they were poisoned. And all of this, her entire life taken and destroyed in the matter of a couple of months. So yeah, and we actually just came back from accompanying another farmer, just kind of checking it out to see what kind of damage was there. And he said that his mental health is tied to the farm. He loves being out there so much that he becomes depressed when he's not able to be with his olive trees. He loves the smell, he loves tending to them. And it just really speaks to how effective the propaganda machine that is Israel at twisting a narrative to make all of these people training to be in the Israeli military to see the Palestinians as murderous. Dee, my friend, mentioned this a bit earlier, but the day after Sunday, we approached some of the military, and they told us that they had families, and that what we were doing wasn't right, and that the people we are helping are the danger. And we were sitting in the car with them right in that moment. Yeah, and it was really frightening, actually. We were driving down the road, and all of a sudden, a soldier popped around the corner with his gun raised, shooting his laser sight through the car. And it's frightening how fast they are at escalating to the point of, as we saw last Sunday, seeing a Palestinian and immediately jumping out of a car and shooting at them. And, for the brief moment that the soldiers don't recognize us as internationals, they treat us the same way for those 2 seconds before they see that we're clearly internationals. And it's harrowing. It's terrible. And it was pointed out, the bars behind me, those exist everywhere. And it's been cited that the Palestinians feel like they're putting themselves into cages because they have to protect their land. We just visited a school, and at this school, they throw tear gas in the school. They throw sound grenades in the school, and there's a large fence circling it, and then within the building itself, there are big metal grates covering the hallways that share an outdoor space as well. And the kids are just kids. Like some of them, they use Microsoft Teams to like go to school online sometimes. And I asked them about, do they like Teams more or do they like going to school more? And they were smiling and having arguments about their experiences. So like I love seeing the children still being able to like be kids despite this, but just seeing the conditions that they live in is difficult.
Okay. Jedda, I hope you get well as well. Maybe you have been exposed to some beating or some harassment by IDF, didn't you?
Could you say that again, please?
Did you confront any kind of harassment by the Israeli troops or security?
One more time.
Did you receive or did you confront face any kind of harassment by Israeli security?
Israeli security, like on the way to like crossing the border, because that was definitely the case. I traveled here with a Palestinian who they had Palestinian family and they were born in America. They had an American passport, and they were asked several more questions just because of their origin. And we were pulled aside. They took our passports, and we sat there for 20 minutes not knowing what was going on until they eventually gave us our passports back. But yeah, I mean, all of the harassment that I have received definitely in just happens by my proximity to the Palestinians, for sure.
Okay.
And yeah, thank you for your patience with the technical issues.
I think you have some problems with your speakers, but anyway, we can hear very well, and we were very pleased to listen to your testimony. And now I might give the floor to Lisa Adhikari, a U.S. activist and human rights advocate, and forgive me for not maybe mispronouncing the name. She could just introduce herself. Ms. Lisa.
Hello, everyone. My name is Lisa Adhikari, and thank you, David and Jedda. You several of the points that I was going to make, you checked right off beautifully. So I am no longer in Kusra. I'm currently in Bethlehem. I'm going to be going back to the U.S. here soon. A couple of things that I would like to speak to is on my last day there, we had a meeting with the women in Kusra. And one of the things that concerned the women there were talking about is how to help their children with a level of fear and trauma. There's a playground in Kusra, and the soldiers, when they see the children, will shoot live ammunition. So the children are afraid to go to the playground. There's nowhere really that they feel safe to play. There's children who have seen fathers, uncles, aunts, cousins, siblings shot and killed or hurt. And children are children. They don't know how to process these things. And one of the things that the women are talking about is, what we're asking us is, how do we help our children feel safe and secure? Same as any parent would want their child to feel safe and secure. Oh, one example that I saw when we first got there. So in the village, there are only so many roads going up to the village. And each of those roads has a big, strong gate. And the army has control over when those gates are open or shut. This is quite terrifying because they can easily close off and isolate the town to do with as they would. There'd be no way to get out. One of the gates has been closed since October 7th. And when we went there, a wedding was happening. And there are about 12 houses that are outside the gate that are very, very vulnerable to settler attacks, because just up the road is the Magdalene settlement. When we were there looking at the gate, there was a group of very young children, maybe anywhere between 6 and 10 years old. And they were going along the side of the road to go through the gate so they could be ferried up by cars up to where the wedding was. And a settler drove by and stopped the car and rolled down his window and told the kids that he was going to kill them. You hear about this on, you see stuff like this on social media, you hear about it, but it's an entirely different thing to see it play out in front of you. This is psychological warfare. It is making sure that the ordinary things in life that would bring families joy, such as a wedding, are things to be afraid of, things that bring terror. I think the impact on the children is really hard because they don't understand. As you get older, you learn how to manage fear and all this, but for the children, how do you process that somebody wants you and your entire kind dead? The other thing that I want to talk about is religion. The United States is full of Christian Zionists who, the applauding of Netanyahu's speech is an example of how this plays out in US politics. And one of the things that has been so beautiful about coming here, and yes, I have this massive bruise across my arm and I'm still limping. I think I have, anyway, but I want to focus on this beautiful thing that I've seen down here. When you ask somebody, are you Muslim? Are you Christian? They look at you and they're like, what's the difference? We all believe in the same God. We've all been here, coexisting forever. The separateness that we're so used to between the religions is not a historic thing. The religions have existed in this region since their inception. This is the native birthplace. This whole area. It is the native indigenous birthplace of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. They've been living and coexisting reasonably peacefully for forever. This, the more I've been learning, the more I've been realizing that this level of conflict is relatively new, but it has become all pervasive and it has been weaponized for political gain, for it's been weaponized in a horrific enough way that we are still, I think it's been 8 months now, watching a genocide happen. And somehow the world is not outraged by it. That is the level of co-opting, political, personal co-opting that has happened of religions that they're cousins, close cousins. And it's something that is quite heartbreaking because at the heart of each of these religions are messages of peace, of unity, of love. And what we see right now between these three religions that are virtually one and the same. I just noticed I was out walking, and our cab driver, when he talked to me in English, he used the word God. When he picked up the phone and was speaking in Arabic to his friend, he used the word Allah. One and the same. And I think that I've learned a lot coming here. The people of Palestine are suffering and have been suffering for an immeasurable amount of time. And it is a crime against humanity. It is a crime against our morality. And I have a lot to think about, but I'm so grateful to have been here. I am so grateful to the people of Worcester for opening their hearts and their homes. And sorry, leaving today was one of the hardest things I think I've ever done in my life. I want to go home. I want to see my family. I want to kiss my daughter, my husband, tell my mom I'm all right, give my dad a hug. You know, I miss my family. I miss my friends. But there's a big part of my heart that is that will remain in Palestine, because the warmth and the generosity that we were met with by people who my government has been hurting so badly in unison with Israel.
We can feel that you're so touched by what's going on, but with experience in the West Bank seems that to have affected your feelings, and you want to go home and try to get yourself together again. And
my heart is so full right now.
I see, but Lisa, I mean, elaborating of what you're saying, do you think that what's happening, I mean, out of what you're saying about West Bank, do you think what's happening in the West Bank is, of course, it's understood, but it receives much less coverage, press coverage, than it happens in Gaza, and this thing may give some more, more power to the Israeli security to just act kind of responsibly in the West Bank, or making use of this opportunity?
Absolutely. I think because the world has been so complicit, the United States, I want to call out the United States because it is my government. Israel would not be doing this without the backing of the United States. Joe Biden's legacy will be genocide. The Democratic Party right now, the US is creating a legacy of genocide. And it has definitely given, because with all the horror that we have seen live streamed nonstop, I feel that it's let the world know the sickening truth, how much some lives matter and some lives don't. And as a white woman with a US passport, whose life, ideally, the reality is that my life matters more than other people's life. Which is why I went to the West Bank, because it was something, I felt it was something that I can do. I was surprised by, I have to say, I was surprised by the level of the enthusiasm with which we were attacked. I was a little surprised by that, but I will go back again, because we cannot turn a blind eye to the West Bank either. I see
right,
this as
you're
a
right.
systemic thing. But yes, I do believe that the permissiveness and the complicity with which we have allowed the genocide to continue like this has given Israel the green light to go forward with the knowledge
Yeah,
that, oh, I guess Palestinian lives don't matter. And
yeah, we
that
understand
is
and we
a
can feel it very
sickening,
much.
it's a, sorry, it's a sickening
No,
truth.
we can
And
feel, we can feel it.
I need to spend some time processing.
Okay.
I'm sorry if my words and my adjectives are
No.
lacking right now, but
It's very
it's,
natural, yeah.
yes, it's
Expressive as
been
well.
a
Thank you
lot to
very much,
process,
Liz.
and thank you.
Thank you, Lisa, for your contribution. And now we have Ms. Vivi Chen, U.S. activist and human rights advocate, to have the floor. Go ahead, Vivi.
Hi, thank you so much. So, with the attack on Sunday, I want to emphasize how quickly it escalated from nothing to full force violence. There were 3 settler boys who initially came down from the mountain. We were a group of 8, 6 of us are women. You know, half of these women are mothers. They could definitely be the same age as these boys' mothers. And none of us had any weapons. The only thing we had in our hands were our phones and our cameras for filming. And they attacked with their full strength. I had not seen the such like impact wounds swell up so much. You can see like on my arm, I still have this over here, and then on this arm, I still have a lot of swelling as well. There was a Palestinian farmer that Jedda mentioned earlier. She had been tending to this land since she was little. And she was a grandmother. And had she not left, thank God that she left. Had she not left, she would have been attacked too, because they did not discriminate against who they were attacking. They came down and most of these boys had their faces covered. So the question is, right, like, why are they covering their faces? Why are they so afraid of being filmed? If they are afraid of being filmed by, you know, whether it's activists or journalists, then does that mean that they're doing something that they recognize, at least that could be seen by others, that they are doing wrong? One of the boys, I was holding a DSLR camera and he even tried to break my lens. So it was very clear that they did not want to be filmed, but that they wanted to be able to act with impunity, which again, they still did, right? In the West, we say that Israel has a right to defend itself. It's framed as almost an equal war, but here in the West Bank, we can see that it's completely unequal. One side is attacking the other very clearly. On the ground here in just one village, we can see, you know, it's always different than what we can see on the news. News is very fast. They show clips that are just for, you know, a couple of minutes. We stood there on this farm for a long time, and the only thing that the Palestinian farmers were doing was they were walking around and they were tending to their trees. They were trying to pull out weeds, see what the situation was. So there was absolutely nothing that warranted an attack. And immediately, not too long after we got there, the settlers came in a Jeep or some kind of, you know, all-terrain car, and they were circling us. And then a few came, and then a few more came. And it was clear that they were gathering their forces to attack, intimidate. I think this is why I didn't expect to actually get into any sort of physical altercation, because I thought that they were just there to intimidate. But they did when they started swinging, it was a surprise to me. Why would they attack, you know, on farmland? If this is, you know, their right to defend themselves, these farmers are not doing anything to provoke an attack. This is the settlers. This is not their land. They are not tending to the land. They are root trees here that are being tended to by Palestinian farmers. So why would they want to attack here, right? Like it's not their land, it's not their trees. They don't even care about the trees. They're not watering the trees. They're not caring for the trees. So they come down to attack, and it seems like it's purely for the sport of it. It's a very lawless land, it seems like here. Not only do the settlers act with impunity, they are in fact supported by the army. it's kind of a lose-lose situation, right? Because if you get attacked by the settlers, the only people with weapons that could stop them that you can call for protection is the Israeli police. So we did call the Israeli police. We dialed 100. And then the army came instead, and they made things infinitely worse. In fact, the army showed up with the head settler of the settlement of Magdalene in the same car with the army. So they already came together, and as was mentioned before, they got out and immediately pointed their guns at our friend that we had to shout, no, no, he's our friend, don't shoot, don't shoot. I was on the phone with the police at the time, and I said, please stop them, like they're shooting at our friend, they're shooting at our friend, please tell them to stop. And clearly they all understood English too, so they were just ignoring us. When the army came, they treated us as if we were a threat. And we look like, honestly, a group of tourists. None of us are dressed in any kind of tactical gear. You know, we're just wearing t-shirts, we're wearing hats, we're carrying our phones. So there's no reason for them to treat us as if we were criminals. You know, we see these tactics in the US as well, that the people who call the police are often treated as the criminals, even though they're the ones who called for help. And as we know, the US Army and the Israeli armies, they work closely with each other. They learn their strategies from each other. They train with each other. You know, the army came, they cursed at us, they made fun of us. Even one army guy who was, you know, the one that was saying like, oh, you guys are a joke, you're hilarious, you're making me laugh, his face was covered. So why would this army man need to cover his face if he is acting in a professional capacity and not doing anything wrong? Because none of the other ones were covering their faces. They didn't offer us any medical care, despite them most likely having a basic medical kit in their cars if they're, you know, members of the army. The people that we talk to in the village, they say they have to act like thieves just to go to their own land, to tend to their own trees, right? What is the point in preventing people from going to care for trees, for fruits, for, you know, whatever produce that is on the land? That doesn't seem like it has any kind of like military need or anything like that. These are, you know, just unarmed civilians. So even last night in the town of Kusra, the army came into town and they started shooting at some kids. And the kids, you know, at most they had rocks and stuff. But it's just very unequal. I think this is like the way that it's often framed in the West makes it seem as if it's two sides battling each other, when it's in fact one side that is coming to the homes of the other and attacking them, even though the Palestinians can't have guns, they're unarmed. You know, we even saw a video recently of a family getting attacked while sitting on the doorstep of their own home, and the grandmother was hit and they collapsed and everything. So yeah, I think that what we've really seen here on the ground in the West Bank is just the really unequal power that these two different people have.
Vivi, thank you very much for this contribution and your story. But I believe you have some, you were exposed to a kind of beating. Do you have any injuries?
Yes, so I was hit a bunch of times on both arms. So I have this on this arm, as well as on my elbow over here, and I still have a lot of swelling on this arm. It was a very large bump, and I couldn't raise my arm for a while. Yeah, luckily they didn't aim for the head. I had turned around, and they just kept hitting.
I'll give just I mean, the reason for beating you, they know that you are a foreigner and you are not just an activist, and you were so, of course, I can understand you were so peaceful with them, but what was the point of hitting you?
Yeah, by the time that they actually came to hit us, we were actually quite far from them. So the group of boys had grown larger and larger. What we suspect had happened, although can't confirm, is there was one guy who was on the phone the whole time. And we think that he was trying to call the army or for more backup, because more and more boys with these like really wide sticks showed up, and they were all the way down the road, and we had backed up down the road. So we were far away. And then when they started hitting us, they approached us. All we were doing was standing there. We didn't, you know, make any threats. We did not move towards them. We just stood there, watched them and filmed them. and they came towards us. And then they first shoved David, and they shoved the woman next to him, who, you know, she is an older woman. She's a lot smaller than them. They pushed her down the hill. Even if David hadn't protected her, they could have done much worse. And Lisa can show her arm as well. She was beaten quite badly just for standing in front of them and saying, stop, stop. Because the only thing we were saying to them was, stop, stop, don't, like, what are you doing? What are you doing? We did not make any move towards them. We did not have any weapons. So it's truly unprovoked, unless they think that just by us being there is a provocation, which in that case, like, why? Why is just people standing on this land a provocation?
Yeah, that's very weird to hear. So, and I hope as well that you get well soon, Vivi. And now, yeah, thank you. And now I think we are a little bit short of time, and now we want to, and everybody has already made his own contribution. And there's just, if each of you have a last comment just for 1 minute to conclude what has happened during this session, and then we can end it at the maybe something like 5 or 6 minutes. Does anyone have any kind of comments he wants to make at the end, or any question to anyone else?
Well, could I just jump in, Nader? I just want to say, first of all,
Go ahead.
That the stories and what these people have been through is really moving. And I said earlier, to talk about archives. The Israelis are doing their best to kill the journalists who are the keepers of the archives, the documenters, if you will, and they're also destroying the archive. So I would urge OHR to keep this as an archive, to keep this as evidence for potential charges to be brought against the IDF, and if possible, some of these settler thugs that are, as has been made very powerfully, are behaving with complete impunity because of our government, my government here in the UK, the US government have enabled, provided the weaponry, but more than that, provided the ground to allow this atrocity to carry on. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. I think also we have Jedda and Lisa. I mean, I think one of them wants to show her wounds, like what Vivi did before. And go ahead, Jedda. You have something to add?
Yeah, and I'll keep it a little brief, but I think V put it really well that, you know, the apparatus of suppressing the Palestinians is, it accompanies like every area that you could think of, like in terms of their suppression. They make it really hard to purchase like cattle or to tend to their sheep by making it like near impossible, or like the roadblocks in order to purchase like a house or anything that they could like sustain their farm is incredibly difficult. The military enforces zones and like contributes to harassment. They enable and protect the settlers who do illegal acts with impunity, and then the government also contributes to making demolition orders for houses. So it's this slow burn that is honestly painfully slow to watch from nearly every way you could suppress somebody, from evicting them from their houses, from scaring them from their houses, from destroying the land. It's just terrible to see.
Thank you, Jedda. And we move to Lisa. Lisa, are you there?
Yes, I am. So,
yeah, you wanted to, I mean, show us something?
Yeah, talking about you know, going off what's said about, you know, just the level of viciousness that I've seen towards the Palestinian people, and that was also turned on us, was quite I've been I'm still having trouble being able to walk around. This was from a rock thrown at I don't know if you can, from a rock thrown at close range. It circles most of my arm here, and is still incredibly painful. And this is back, you know, from Sunday. You can see how hard the impact. You can see the impact point from the rock right here. You know, the entire kind of the top of my right leg also looks similar to this. So when there is no holding back. This level of violence is not just shown towards, you know, adult age, you know, adult men, you know, adults, but also to small children. I mentioned before about the settler stopping the car. As he was going along, he saw a group of Palestinian children going along the side of the road, decided to stop the car and tell them that he was going to kill them, just to cause, you know, that psychological harm. But the brutality is incredible. There is not there's hardly a door in Kusra that doesn't have bullet holes in it. There's, you know, bullet holes all over people's houses, on doors. And so I think that's something is that to keep in mind is that in their eyes, there is no difference between a child, a small child, and, you know, 8-year-old, an older woman, the two women that they threw down the cliff, that they threw down the hill into the brambles, the one that they threw the rocks at, she's in her mid-60s. It is complete impunity, and it is incredibly vicious, incredibly violent.
I see. I mean, we can feel very much your pain and what you can feel over there. Thank you very much, Lisa, for your comments.
Thank you.
And
Yeah.
everybody, I want to thank everybody for this very, very significant discussion we had about what happened and journalism during what's going on the ground in the West Bank for this for journalism and the coverage. And now at the end of this fruitful webinar, I would like to thank everyone who has taken part in it, either by speaking, commenting, or listening. But we have just one thing. After we say goodbye, we have the video of Dr. Noah. The video of Mr. Aidan White, who is founder of Ethical Journalism Network. He was not able to join us live, and he recorded a video. So we will listen to the video, and we will show the video now, and afterwards the meeting will end. So we can say goodbye now. Thank you very much for being with us, and let's watch the video of Mr. Aidan White.
Hello, my name's Aidan White. I'm the founder and the president of the Ethical Journalism Network. Thanks very much for the opportunity to say a few words this afternoon about the continuing difficult situation for human rights and for democracy and for journalism in Gaza and the Middle East. I'm sorry I can't be with you this afternoon because I think the issues you're talking about are of fundamental importance to all of us, but they get to the heart of an important battle and struggle that is now taking place for the soul of international justice and the right to apply international humanitarian law across the world. Since October last year, the actions of the Israeli government and their military have called into question not just the credibility of Israel's own claims to be a democratic state, but they have undermined the rule of international law and called into question the whole framework of international legal protections. It's been a horrifying time for people, for defenders of human rights generally, and for journalists. The numbers speak for themselves. More than almost 30,000, almost 40,000 people, and many of them women and innocent women and children, have been killed in this conflict. The number of journalists killed is around 150, 160. It's very difficult to know. The numbers vary, but certainly there's one thing that's not in doubt. It's the highest number of journalists killed in a single conflict in an unprecedented short period of time. So therefore we have a sort of a massive crisis, and in this crisis we see the challenges that are there for journalists who are trying to do their job, and the challenges for human rights defenders and for relief workers and aid workers who are trying to alleviate the suffering of the population. I want to sort of really focus on the importance of this moment in terms of how we defend international law and why we need to defend more than ever the rights of journalists. Israel's actions are, of course, completely unacceptable. And in general, I don't think there's much doubt that most democratic countries now recognize the disproportionate nature of the Israeli response to the attacks on October the 7th, have not justified at all the breaches of international law which have been recorded. So what can be done and what should be done? Well, first of all, we have to revisit the protections that should be given to journalists. Israel itself has been a signatory to UN treaties in 2015. I think it was Resolution 2222. Israel committed itself to protecting the rights of journalists and voluntarily did so. It has completely discarded and disregarded those obligations in this conflict. We have seen Israel massaging media, ensuring that propaganda is paramount in terms of achieving its strategic and military objectives, and we have seen its physical destruction of the structure for truth-telling through its attacks on Palestinian media and its targeting of journalists on the spot, several of which now have been referred to the international courts for investigation as crimes of war. So we need to look at how can we ensure now, at this moment, that those journalists who are courageously trying to tell the truth, trying to tell the story, are given some protection. That should be one of the first aims of any pressure that's applied on Israel at this time. Secondly, we have to look at the importance of trying to enforce existing international humanitarian law and the obligations that Israel has to maintain. There's no doubt at all that I think the groundbreaking action by South Africa in bringing to the international courts the question of genocidal acts by Israel in this conflict is absolutely vital. And we must also recognize the action of governments like Norway and Spain and Ireland, who have stood up against the genocidal activity of Israel in this conflict. But we need more. The fact of the matter is, Israel, by its actions, has shaken completely the foundations of the international legal protections, and we must somehow find a way of rebuilding it. And I think that is going to be a major task. So it's going to be necessary to hold Israel and the Israeli authorities to account for their crimes during this period. So we need to strengthen existing treaties and commitments. We need to make sure there are special protections for journalists, that journalists are allowed freedom of movement. And we have, above all, to support independent media. I think, finally, this is really my major point. Independent media and human rights protection are the twin pillars that keep our democracies alive. Without human rights, there can be no democracy. Without independent journalism, there can be no free speech and no human rights. These are completely interdependent rights. So at the moment, we're seeing Israel attacking bluntly the structure of international human rights law, and we are absolutely dependent upon the courage of truth-telling journalists to get out the information that Israel would like to cover up and would like to suppress. And that's why at this moment we must give absolute priority to supporting journalists on the spot, to trying to ensure that they can work safely, and to hold Israel and its military to account for the attacks that take place on journalists. It will take some time for us to rebuild confidence in international humanitarian law, and until we can have instruments that can be brought into play which will penalize those governments that are defiant and cynically breaking international law and committing crimes of war. Until we can do that effectively, we're going to need to rely on truth-telling from journalists and others who are on the spot. So that's why I think the discussion today is really important. We need to establish, and with the help of Arab journalists and Arab
Okay, I think the video has ended, and we thank Dr. White for his contribution. And I would like again to thank each and every one of you for his comments, for his contributions, and the people on the ground also for their suffering during the past time. And thank you for your time again, and we hope we can meet again to discuss more and more about the situation on the ground in Palestine. Thanks a lot, and goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.